If you're anything like me, you have found yourself in situations at different points of your life where you thought to yourself, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Situations that were so messy, so messed up, so complicated or costly, so stressful or screwed up that you couldn't help but wonder, how did I get myself into this? Why did I ever think this was a good idea? Now, you don't have to admit this to anybody, but how many times have you promised yourself that you would never get in that situation again, only to later get yourself in that situation again? Yeah, me too. We've all done it at least once, which brings up the question, why would we do that to ourselves? I mean, it wasn't smart to put yourself in that position. It's even less smart to not learn from it and repeat the mistake. After all, pain without gain, well, it's a shame. It's a waste to go through a hard time and learn nothing. But we've all been guilty of it. And King Solomon painted a picture for us of what we're like when we keep repeating the same mistake over and over again. Now, this is not the most flattering thing someone's ever said about you. So just remember, I'm not saying it, Solomon did, okay? Proverbs 26:11 says, as a dog returns to its vomit, so fools repeat their folly. Well, it's a bit of a gross image, isn't it? But Solomon says you and I are acting like fools when we experience pain without gain, when we don't learn from our mistakes, when we refuse to change based on what we've experienced. So this episode is about how to make sure we're not like a dog returning to its vomit when it comes to our financial mistakes. This is the final episode in our short mini-series we are calling Unlost, and we're talking about why being lost financially can hurt us spiritually. The point of this series is not to get money from you. Everybody can take a deep breath. It's actually to offer freedom to you, because according to the latest data, we keep getting worse, not better financially as Americans. Over half of us are living paycheck to paycheck. Over half of us worry about money every day. The majority of us don't have enough savings to cover an unexpected $1,000 expense. I mean, that's a problem. So just like you can be lost morally or relationally or professionally, you can easily get lost financially. You can be lost financially with no money. You can be lost financially with a lot of money, because it is not just about debt. It is about direction. If you're thinking, okay, Matt, but this isn't something we ought to be talking about at church. A pastor shouldn't deal with this. Well, I would respectfully disagree, because Jesus talked about money and possessions more than heaven, hell, prayer, and faith combined. The truth is, you cannot fully follow Jesus and be lost financially. It is impossible, because money is too powerful and central to our lives. If you think about it, most of your worries, your concerns, your challenges in life, they are all connected to money. So if you don't see your money like Jesus does, you will never be able to live like he invites you to live. All right, so last episode, we wrapped up with an evaluation that would help us identify if we're lost financially. I hope that was helpful if you watched it. What I want to do now is I want to give us God's framework for how to get unlost. In other words, if you feel lost financially, here's your map to get out of it. Here are God's directions to fix it. First, you have to think like a manager. Do not think like an owner. Now, if you don't get this one, I'm telling you, you will never get unlost financially, because this mindset determines everything you do with your money. The Apostle Paul made this point by asking a question to the Jesus followers in Corinth. In 1 Corinthians 4, he wrote, what do you have that you didn't receive? In other words, it wasn't a gift from God. And if you did receive it, why do you boast as though you didn't? That's a great question, Paul. See, owners always think they deserve everything they have. I earned it. And because of that, owners act like consumers. If you have an owner mindset, every time God blesses you with more, your first thought is, how can I use this for me? I'm going to save it, I'm going to spend it, I'm going to invest it based on what I want. But when you view yourself as a manager, you recognize nothing you have is forever yours. It is all God's on loan to you for a season, and you're responsible to do with it what the owner tells you to do. So imagine, if I gave you $100,000 to manage for me, you would not think, what do I want to do with this money? No, you would find out what I wanted done with the money I loaned you, and then you would do it. And in the process of managing my money, guess what? You're going to reap some rewards. But my priorities are your priorities as you manage my money. That's why managers can live with open hands. If the owner tells them to be generous, they have no problem giving the owner's money away. It's actually fun. There's no temptation for a manager to be greedy. Managers don't feel entitled. They feel grateful every day because of the opportunity they have to manage and enjoy the rewards of the owner's money. So to be unlost financially, you have to recognize you are a manager, not an owner. God has given you everything you have for a season, but then it's going to go somewhere else or to somebody else. Ownership is a myth. So you have to have a mindset shift. Your goods are not your own. They are on loan from a good and a generous God. Until you learn to think like that, you're going to stay lost financially. Now, step 2 in getting unlost financially just builds off of that. You track your spending. In other words, you got to be knowing where the money is going. Why? Well, because you're responsible for managing someone else's money. Now, I'm not saying you have to log every penny in a spreadsheet, but you better know how much money you spend on different items and categories. You better know how much you give, how much you save, how much you invest. You got to be knowing where the money is going, or you'll have no way of getting unlost. Let's just go back to my analogy for a second. Imagine I came in and I asked you, hey, I loaned you $100,000 to manage. How have you been managing my money? And you said, I honestly have no idea where that money went. Well, I would fire you, right? You wouldn't keep your job as a manager, but that is how a lot of us are managing the money God puts in our hands every single paycheck. A good manager knows how much comes in and where it all went. So you got to be tracking your spending. Even if you are in a great position financially and you don't have to worry about paying the bills or having enough money, you still should know where it's going. You know why? Because the more money you have, the more inclined you are to waste it. I can prove this to you. If you go to Sam's and you buy one of those huge bulk packages of paper towels, well, you are rich in paper towels, aren't you? So when you have a spill around the house, what do? You just pull off a bunch of paper towels at once. You're not careful. You don't care. You don't count them. Plenty of other paper towels in the closet. You're not worried about running out. But if you know there's only 1 or 2 rows of paper towels left in your house, that's a different story. Now you only tear off 1 sheet to use. The more you have, the more tempted you are to waste. So if you're a Jesus follower, you're a manager of God's stuff, which means you're going to give an account of what you did with His money. You don't want to ignore His priorities and waste it. You better track it. You better manage it well. And that leads us to the third step to becoming unlost financially. Refuse to use bad debt. Now, what's bad debt? Any debt that's keeping you from following God's priorities for your life and the money He's entrusted you to manage. Now, you know what debt is, right? Most debt is simply an expression of my lack of self-control. I didn't have the self-control to save up for that first, so I financed it. I didn't have the self-control to tell myself no, so I just put it on the credit card. I didn't have the self-control to buy a used, reliable car. No, I thought I needed a new one. So now I owe more on something than it's worth. And when you have debt, now you're not free to do what God's asking you to do because you don't just answer to Him anymore. You now answer also to your lender. You have chosen the wrong king, the wrong boss, which is why Solomon said in Proverbs 22, the rich rule over the poor. Why? Because the rich spend their lives investing and making interest. The poor spend their lives borrowing and paying interest. And whoever you owe becomes your boss, becomes your king. So Solomon reminds us, the borrower is slave to the lender. Isn't that true? If you have bad debt, do you feel the constant pressure of making payments to somebody that you probably don't even know on something you may not even enjoy anymore? So you can't follow Jesus fully and live with bad debt. You need to refuse to use it so you're free to do what Jesus asked you to do anytime He asks you to do it. And that leads to the final step to becoming unlost financially. You follow this simple plan. You give, you save, and you live. These are God's priorities for money management. It's His financial management plan. You give first, you save second, and then you live on the rest, which just means every time you get a paycheck, God says the first thing you do with my money that I'm giving you is you take 10% or more. By the way, if you've ever heard the word tithe, it means 10%. It's a starting point. And God says you give it away because He wants you to focus on others before yourself. He knows happy is the person whose life revolves around giving rather than receiving. So that's the first thing you do. Then with that paycheck, you take a percentage of your income and you invest it for the future because that means you'll be as free to do what God wants you to do tomorrow as you are today. And then imagine this. The God who owns all you have says once you give and once you save, then He wants you to enjoy the money He has entrusted to your care. So put together a spending plan so you don't waste it. And so you can know where it's going, but enjoy what he's given you. This is how you get unlost financially. This is how you get unlost from greed, from a lack of self-control, from debt, and from an owner mindset. You think like a manager, you track your spending, you refuse to use dumb debt, and you give, save, and then live. So, how are you doing at that? And where do you need to make a change? What do you need to rearrange in your financial world to honor the priorities of your king and the owner of everything that you manage? After all, remember, pain without gain is a shame. So do not waste this opportunity to change and grow. Don't find yourself in 2 years going, what was I thinking? I mean, you know what step you need to take. You know what to do. You probably have heard this before. You've even said you wanted to do this. So will you make this the time that you do it? You will not regret it. You know how I know that? Because I've met a lot of people in my life who ignored one or more of these steps and then later told me their regret stories. But I have never met a single person who followed these 4 steps and then told me they regretted it and wished they could go back to doing money their own way. That's never happened. Nobody who gets here ever wants to go back, and you will not either, I promise you. So remember, if you follow Jesus, his spirit lives in you, he is ready to help you make the changes you need to make, and he has surrounded you with people who encourage you as you go through the process of getting unlost financially. Because that's how you learn to fully follow your king who loves you.